Oh, we have a Republican who went the other way.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
A lot of rumblings here in Rhode Island with municipal officials who are screaming, help, because they think they're underneath it unless the governor vetoes again. But right now the numbers look so strong that even a veto would not withstand that which has been passed at the legislature this week, at least on the House side and the Senate side to be. And that is the extension of contracts. Some would call them evergreen, which I don't think is really accurate. Some would call them lifetime guarantees, which may be closer, but not necessarily. I will tell you, to a person that I've asked, I get different answers about what this law means. So we will talk to the newly elected and lone Republican who actually said yes to this idea, coming up in just a minute. Great to have you aboard on this Thursday evening. So Joe Biden is in. The headline and a 3-minute video. Here's a minute excerpt as he searches for the soul of America.
It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans. And a violent clash ensued. And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
A couple things that stood out to me when I saw that this morning. First, he didn't introduce himself. Didn't do the old resume thing, because most people think, and I'm sure Joe Biden thinks as well, that everybody kind of knows each other here. So that's going to be an interesting part of this whole thing. Look, anybody who watches the show and who listens to the radio weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO knows I am no fan of the president and his persona. I'm not hyping impeachment, though, I can tell you that. And I will tell you, if Joe Biden makes this the exclusive message, he might fare well in the Democratic primary. He may be able to take the progressives on in a litmus test of who can beat Donald Trump. And then he's going to get waxed in the general election. Because unless the economy takes a spin, right now people are checking their 401ks and they're checking their paychecks, and they are tolerating Donald Trump. Now, if the dynamics of the economy change, that's fine. But he better have an idea or two that he's going to sell other than I'm a better human being than Donald Trump, because that's not going to get it done. Anyway, in the meantime, let's come home here to this craziness that occurred yesterday with Lifespan burping out a press release calling the merger with Care New England and partners in Boston devastating. Here's a little bit from the news take.
2 years, Boston-based giant Partners Healthcare has been trying to take over the Care New England hospitals, Women and Infants, Kent, and Butler. Now the state's biggest healthcare group is stepping into the fray. Rhode Island hospital owner Lifespan launching a public campaign to block the Partners CNE deal, including this new website, protectrihealthcare.org. Lifespan CEO Tim Babineau declined to discuss the matter on camera, but told me by phone, this is probably one of the most important transactions that will occur in this state for years to come, and I just don't think people have all the facts. Lifespan cites multiple concerns, including the potential for job cuts, patients being sent to Boston, and no investment commitment by Partners. Earlier this year, I took those concerns directly to the Partners executive who would be running Care New England, Brigham Health President Dr. Betsy Nabel.
Keeping care is local is very important, and that's what we want to do in Rhode Island.
Now, listen, this has been a little bit of a professional menage a trois that's been going on here between Lifespan, Care New England, and Partners in Boston. They've all been at the table together. That was explained to us here on this program by Jim Finale, the CEO of Care New England, just days ago. So, what I'm saying is that it looks like Lifespan is out of the loop, and Care New England has assets that they want to engage, and I get that, but there are all sorts of things in the boardroom that obviously aren't coming out that prevented Lifespan and Care New England to get together here in Rhode Island. So now you've got this Boston thing, and there's fire being shouted in a crowded theater here from Lifespan saying, oh, the doctors are all going to go north, and the economy of medicine is going to be in the dumper, and people aren't going to get treated well, and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Sometimes doth protest too much. I talked to Jim Finale on the radio yesterday about this charge from Lifespan, that this was devastating to Rhode Island's medical quality of life.
This is, I think, not that complex. Number one, devastating is a heck of a strong word to be using.
Sure,
I mean,
it is.
As a venerable healthcare institution in the state of Rhode Island, at Care New England, if anybody would think that what we want to do is going to be devastating to the state of Rhode Island, is misspoken. It's not at all that. I think we made a credible example that we have moved more services into Rhode Island than before. We take care of more people in Rhode Island than we did before as part of our current affiliation with Kent. This is going to bring more experts into Rhode Island than they're currently present. I think that, I can't help but to think, listen, you try to do a deal, you try to get an arrangement done, it doesn't work. And we have stated clearly, mutual respect, that they will come back to the table after. This is vitally important to Care New England. It's vitally important to our patients. It's vitally important to the Rhode Island economy.
All right, so this application for the merger acquisition between Care New England, that has women and infants and Butler and Kent Hospital amongst its assets. Lifespan, obviously, is Rhode Island Hospital and Miriam and the others. And there's peripheral hospitals as well, of course. Charter's got Roger Williams and St. Joseph's, and there's Landmark North and all that. But this deal is going to be approved for its final application. In other words, okay, we think everything that we need to review is in momentarily, and then there'll be a 90-day review period by the Department of Health and the Attorney General on this. And clearly Lifespan wants to bust that up. I am speaking with Tim Babineau, the CEO of Lifespan, on the radio tomorrow on WPRO live between 3 and 4. Hopefully we get him to this set as well. That's going to be a pretty good conversation because I want to know what's up. What happened in the boardroom that's causing this? In the meantime, this headline real quick. I just see this again on the front page of the Providence Journal. Rhode Island threatens to withhold Medicaid payments to some nursing homes. Look, this is the UHIP problem gone crazy, and the nursing homes, by and large, are trying to reconcile what they have to send back to the state because the state can't keep its pace with the regular flow of payments that are due on a regular and sundry basis. I've done a couple of shows on this already. You ought to look into it before you suggest to yourself or joke about nursing homes ripping us off. It's not that. It's not that. And the state so far has been cooperative in working with the nursing homes over its own computer mistakes and problems. This is still Governor Raimondo's problem, and she can't discharge it. All right. The conversation tonight is about this and a couple other things. Rhode Island House okays evergreen contract bill. The Journal keeps calling it evergreen. The municipal leaders are calling it lifetime employment. And it's another return of a bill that was here a couple of years ago that was passed in the General Assembly and vetoed by the governor. And our guest was not a rep at the time. He was a senator a long, long time ago. 24 years ago, Jack?
24 years ago.
All right, well, welcome back to the legislature.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that.
Congratulations on your election. Always been a Republican?
Grew up a Republican. I was born into a Republican family, and I'm a proud Republican, a Northeastern Republican, a John Chafee, Nelson Rockefeller, Ed Brooke Republican.
Okay, and an educator with a long resume, right?
Thank you.
Teacher, principal, superintendent.
I'm proud of the work that we did in the classroom. I'm proud of the work that we did as a principal as well as superintendent.
So clearly your professional experience advises you in this particular situation with the legislature. Give me 15 seconds and then we'll expand on why you voted yes for this contract that all your fellow Republicans said no to.
I'm a firm believer in the collective bargaining process, and that's all this bill does. It makes certain that both parties are at the table to negotiate a contract. It's really in the best interest of taxpayers. It's the best interest of teachers and municipal workers. Again, I believe the collective bargaining process is the most important process that we can engage in terms of labor relations.
All right. The mayors would say, poppycock. We'll come back and talk about it. Stay with us.
Sent a stern letter out to my members of my General Assembly, my delegation, asking them to vote against it. And quite frankly, if they vote for it and I have to raise the taxes, I have no problem putting their names on the tax bill. I really believe in my heart, at least I'll speak for myself, I don't want to lay off anybody. I just want to be able to have a fair negotiations at the table. And I say I'm speaking for the taxpayers. I just want to be able to sit down and basically not sit down with my hands tied behind my back and a blindfold on, because that's what this will do to us, and it's really going to hurt the taxpayers.
Yeah, it's the Mayor Johnston on the radio talking about this continuation contract, which bill which the House passed 60-8, and the Senate committee, amongst a bunch of pro-labor packages last night, gave the thumbs up. I'm sure the Senate's going to ratify this. The governor will have to make a decision on whether to veto, but right now the numbers are veto-proof. Representative Lyle is a Republican, the only one who moved away from this, just told us about his belief in collective bargaining. Here's the situation that I'm concerned about. Times of trouble. And a district says, it has to telegraph, because you can't hide the numbers, that there could be, God forbid, a salary reduction, a pension benefit reduction of some kind. With a contract that says, okay, well, with a law that says, all right, well, your expired contract, all the numbers stay the same, until you get a new one. What's the motivation for the union to come to the table?
The cost of living goes up for everyone: gas, food, taxes. And so part of the motivation for those on the labor side would be they would want a salary bump.
But when it's forecast, listen, in normal and good times, there's going to be some increase along the way. But we've had times when and we have a bubble. We have a pension bubble that is going to burst all over Kingdom Come here on a municipal level. The state pension program, sort of fixed. You don't worry about the maneuverability of the taxpayers through local mayors and administrators to be able to hold the line?
I hate to be redundant, but that's the importance of effective collective bargaining. Both parties need to sit at the table and come up with something that really works from both sides. I'm very, very concerned that teachers and municipal workers are viewed to be something other than taxpayers. They too are going to be facing that bill.
But listen, listen, I am not a union basher. I know that it's been up and down with the unions all my career here, but I know when it comes to contract time, contract numbers are the only thing that educate anybody who belongs to a union. Doesn't matter what you do for a living, private or public sector. That's all you think about. You don't think about the taxes that you pay. You think about the salary and the benefits that you're going to earn. There's no dual focus there.
But those are benefits that have been earned, and that's demonstrated by the fact that there is a contract which is signed by both parties initially. This is what you deserve.
So what are you going to tell Administrator Ahmed about this? I'm sure you've talked with him about it. He's probably not very happy with you.
No, he's not. And I was at a capping off ceremony at Lincoln High School the other day, where they're putting the finishing touches on an addition. And I did have a chance to talk with Joe and members of the council, and they're not happy with me. But again, I go back to it's important that both sides come to the table and reach reasonable positions so that the education process.
But if the town is telegraphing that they want reductions,
that's not good. That's not good negotiations.
But Jack, if there's no money in the till in that particular cycle,
both sides need to be reasonable and accommodating when they're at the table. And I would contend that labor would be reasonable, realizing the economic down times and hard times. I'm a firm believer that reasonable parties will come together and come up with responsible and reasonable decisions.
It should be noted that there's no binding arbitration for teachers. The other unions, I actually have to do some homework on that. The other public municipal employees, I'm not sure that they have that.
Municipal
Police and fire,
police and fire
have binding arbitration.
Correct.
But contracts do go to arbitration. It becomes a suggestion versus. And by the way, there's certain tenets in these agreements that are arbitration heavy and not arbitration heavy, and so it's.
The thing that
the
thing that we need to avoid is the situation that we had in East Providence several years ago and in Warwick. We have to make sure that people do not come into negotiations with a heavy-handed axe looking for layoffs and for other.
Well, wait a second, though. The teacher union leaders, Bob Walsh was here the other day. We ran the clip a couple of times. We don't have it for time considerations, but he was saying, hey, by the way, the towns they've got their leverage. They can lay people off. The mayors are saying, wait a second, we don't want to lay people off. We don't want to come with a heavy hand threatening jobs. And I would think that union leadership would be a little more moot about that, with rank and file going, oh, so you're going to serve up layoffs as a solution, put the towns into a corner. We may have a cycle where it's like, hey, listen, everybody needs to take a 0.03 reduction in their salaries and pensions because we don't want to lay anybody off. And I would think rank and file teachers, educators would say, you know what, okay.
And so would leadership.
But they're going.
And so would
they don't have to bring anybody to the table now. They can just say, you know what, we're not taking a hit. That's it. We'll ride this thing out.
By riding it out, there's also the concern, though, about the increased cost of living and making certain that staff, both on the municipal side and on the teacher side, are getting a bump so that they can keep up with raised, increased taxes, increased costs of food and gas and the like.
Okay, well, so this must reflect the same conversation that you had with Joe Almond and members of the council, where we walk away saying, well, good thing you're a good guy, because we'll just have to walk away just agreeing to disagree. You keep talking about bumps. I keep talking about the opposite, if it has to happen. Not that I want to cut salaries. I want to increase salaries for teachers. I'd like to see teachers make more money based on great evaluation and a new system that allows for it. But there might be times of trouble. You know, all we're going to do is sing Mother Mary Better Come to Me because Jack voted to be able to keep the contact perpetual.
I had a conversation this morning at Dave's with a former member of the
Everything good in life happens at Dave's,
former
right?
chair of the school committee in Lincoln, and she said, what changes? This legislation doesn't change anything. This is the way we've always done business. This is simply codifying.
But that's a cultural behavior inside a town.
And well, I think she was speaking for not just the Lincoln School Committee, but school committees across the state, because this is the way that business has been done. And so this is simply codifying that process to ensure that it goes on.
All right. You decide. When we come back, we'll hit a couple of issues. Stay with us.
I hate the mirrors.
Now, I don't know what Representative Lyle thinks about this. He is a freshman of sorts. He took a 24-year break between his Senate elected status and state representative. But all of your education experience ought to give you some thought on this percolating thought about Rhode Island Secretary of Education being inside a package of education bills that are soon to come out of the House. Do you want to do that?
I do not want to do that. I do not want to create another position. This is just more bureaucracy. We need to address problems. We don't need to create positions.
Is in part a little bit of pushback on the governor for hiring Angelica Infante Green as the commissioner, kind of on a stealth basis? I mean, she went out and found her, maybe a great hire. I argued with the governor incessantly about the process about this hire. If you have a Secretary of Education, the legislature would have oversights and inclusion. There'd be open public hearings. But if that's the only motivation, I'm not so sure it's right to rearrange the whole program.
I'm concerned about the transparency in the hire of the new commissioner, but I just do not believe that we need to go down the path of creating a new director and again, bureaucracy that would be attendant to it.
We have, though, I hear from Representative Amore from East Providence, who has been in the middle of this education initiative, that things like site-based management and principal autonomy and diminished role for personnel decisions for school committees and maybe even superintendents is the flavor of this new legislation. Do you like that?
I haven't really looked at it long and hard. My gut is that I like the fact that we have some local control. I don't want to see that given up.
Well, you've been a principal. You've been a teacher principal and an administrator. Did you ever feel hamstrung to be able to make an entrepreneurial decision as a principal that you couldn't because the system or the law didn't provide for it?
The Pollyanna in me would say that I worked under several very outstanding superintendents, and they gave me a lot of rope and allowed me to initiate programs and concepts that allowed the school to develop and flourish. So I worked under some great superintendents who had a positive effect on my career, and I would hate to see their roles diminish.
Meaning the supers?
Yes.
Yeah, so this could be interesting to see how this actually specifically lays out. The Rhode Island Foundation has been doing a lot of work, and I was told by its executive director, Neil Steinberg, yesterday that there's some synergy between the legislation and what the foundation is working on, but they've got some bigger picture stuff they want to see created. Other than education influencing your role as a state representative, what are you having the most fun with and challenged by? And you have a minute to tell us.
The body is a lot more collegial than I had expected it would be. With some of the different players that are there, I didn't think that there was going to be that sense of team. And it's one of the things that I've really come away from. The House noting that people are really pulling together and trying to work in the same direction. And I found that to be exciting. When I went there, I said that I was going to attempt to be a bridge builder, to work with people on all sides of the aisle that are at the House of Representatives. And I've had a heck of a time working with Democrat colleagues along with some of my Republican peers.
10 seconds. Big issue you want to drive home?
Oh, I did introduce legislation about a line item veto and inspector general. I've also been calling for reforms of the 911 system. We've got to do all of those
All right,
things.
well, you're 3 for 3 on that, and at some juncture we'll have you back to expand. Congratulations on your new position, and we'll see what happens with these contracts. If we can't get a deal, we're coming to see you.
Come see me.
The lone Republican who went the other way. It's okay. Everyone has their own mind. We'll have a final word when we come back. Stay with us. Alrighty, I will tell you that the Representative Lyle's position on this keeping a contract in place law is not problematic until we get into some kind of financial hot water, and then we'll see if there's an accountability. But truth be told, not a lot of us pay attention to these details. We just don't. All right, you have a great weekend. Hopefully we don't get too much rain. Next week, amongst things we will be doing, the Center for Freedom and Prosperity says they've got their most important announcement ever. That's the conservative think tank of initiatives in the state. So we'll be paying attention to that. We'll see you on the radio at 3 on Monday, too. Have a great weekend. Bye.